In the movie, Riley and Janai went to Iceland for a fun vacation. Riley had an old camera, take photos, and Janai was happy. But when they woke up, they saw that everyone was gone, and the city was empty. They tried to find people and make the best of it, but things got really tough and ended in a sad way. In the beginning of the movie, on the beautiful roads of Iceland, a young American couple arrived for a great vacation. Riley brought an old camera to take pictures, and his girlfriend Janai posed happily for him. After they got to their hotel room, they went on a tour of Iceland. They saw geysers and hot springs. Later, at dinner, Janai worried about finding film for the old camera. Riley said he had enough film and didn't want a new camera. He liked capturing moments with their natural flaws. They visited famous places like an old church and some beautiful waterfalls. That night, they went back to their hotel to sleep. In the middle of the night, Janai woke up and saw a bright light in the sky for a few seconds before it disappeared. The next morning, they went downstairs for breakfast, but found the buffet empty and no one around. They decided to eat at a cafe. The streets were also empty and silent. After checking the time to be sure it wasn't too early, they wondered if there was a special holiday. They went into different buildings, found no one. It seemed like everyone in the city had vanished except them. They searched more until they realized they were alone. They tried calling their relatives. No one answered. Riley checked the TV and saw that all the news channels were off. Social media was quiet too. They decided to go back to the hotel. Riley used his laptop and found that the internet was working, but news sites hadn't updated since last night. Riley checked security cameras from around the world and saw empty streets everywhere. Riley didn't believe it and thought there must be someone else. They went out to look for people again, found no one. Riley saw a car with an open window and used it to search the city more carefully. Still, they found nobody. They drove out to the countryside but saw no one there either. Janai wondered if the world had ended, and Riley's calls to her mother didn't get through. When they gave up, they tried to feel better knowing they had each other. At night, they went back to the hotel. Janai was so tired and upset that she got annoyed when she had to ask Riley twice to close the blinds. Next morning, Riley woke up first and tried to wake Janai, but she didn't want to get out of bed. Riley left her alone for a while. When he came back, Janai asked how they would get home. They decided to take things from the nearby grocery store. Janai took only a few items, but Riley took lots of groceries, ready for anything. Riley looked for a new car with more space for all their things since no one could stop them now. The couple went looking for a nice house to stay in. Once they found one they liked, Riley made himself comfortable, but Janai wondered if it was really this easy. Next, they went to a clothing store. Janai started by picking out just a few items, but Riley reminded her of their situation. They tried on many outfits and had some fun. They also bought alcohol and played Monopoly while joking around. The next morning at breakfast, Janai wondered if they were being tested. Riley asked if she believed in God and if everything happens by his plan. Janai said belief and faith were different. Riley tried to cheer her up, saying they could do whatever they wanted. They drove to the countryside, and Janai relaxed by putting her feet on the window, letting the wind take her shoes away. They reached the geothermal pools, and Riley laid a cloth on the grass for them to lie and cuddle on. When Riley took a nap, Janai took off her clothes and walked to the pool. Riley followed her, taking pictures until Janai jumped into the water. Riley joined her, and they had fun in the pool. Afterward, they napped together. Janai woke up first and went for a walk through the beautiful fields. When Riley woke up, he took photos of her among the flowers. In the evening, they went back to the city. At the grocery store, Riley played around like a kid and fell, hurting his arm. They planned a romantic dinner and dressed nicely. However, Janai couldn't stop thinking about what happened in the store. She told Riley they needed to be careful because there were no doctors or firefighters to help them. Riley thought Janai was overreacting and just wanted to keep having fun, which made Janai upset. She walked away angrily. Soon after, Riley walked through the empty city with flowers and found Janai lying down, still in a bad mood. He didn't like seeing her like this and promised to be more careful, but said they had everything they needed, beautiful views and each other. They could make the rest up. Janai didn't like this and wanted to go home, but they couldn't do anything about it. After another trip and many new pictures, they came back home, and Janai found the tap water wasn't working. Janai wanted him to be more careful with food, since they wouldn't have endless supplies. Later, Riley swam alone in the pool, while Janai walked to a church and saw a statue with strange marks. She talked to it, hoping for a sign about what was happening. On another trip outside the city, they reached some hot springs. Riley asked Janai to listen to the heartbeat of the world and said he loved Iceland. After that, they went to a beach with volcanic rocks, and Riley tried to share a legend about trolls. Janai interrupted him by saying they were out of drinking water. Next, they stopped by an old plane. Riley took many pictures because he thought it looked interesting. Janai got upset and said it was just old junk that had outlived its use. She also shouted that Riley couldn't just change the view to make her feel better. Frustrated, Riley asked what he should do, but Janai told him to open his eyes and drove away, leaving Riley to sleep on the plane. That night, Janai slept in the car in a remote place. In the morning, she came back to check on Riley. When he woke up, they didn't speak. Janai just gave him something to drink, and they went back to the city together. The rest of the day, Riley walked around town and took pictures of graffiti and street art. One artwork with creepy eyes scared him so much that he threw away his film. Meanwhile, Janai spent time on her laptop, trying to find notifications and contact people, but had no luck. Later, Janai went to church to pray, while Riley visited stores to collect items for a project he had in mind. When he took the elevator, the doors suddenly closed, and he thought he was trapped. Luckily, the doors opened again, and Riley went home. When he arrived, Janai wasn't around, so he kept himself busy building things. Janai, on the other hand, was feeding a horse and enjoying the animals, since they were the only living things she had seen in a while. Later, the couple traveled again, and Janai drove while listening to old voicemail messages to remember the voices of her family and friends. After driving past some glaciers, they got out of the car and explored. They sat together on a glacier, and Janai talked about nature's power to destroy everything, wondering if God had grown impatient. Riley, however, believed the future was uncertain, but was determined to stay with Janai. Later, they went back to the city. Janai found a place to develop their pictures and also discovered a flower shop, but her excitement faded when she saw that all the flowers were dead. Riley encouraged her to find flowers elsewhere, suggesting they needed a change of scenery. Eventually, they arrived at a lakeside cabin with a fireplace they wanted to use. Riley went to gather wood and was shocked to find another person named Niels in the forest. Niels didn't look well, so they shared their supplies and took him inside. Niels said he hadn't seen anyone else and had left the city because he wanted to be alone if the world ended. Niels kept coughing badly, and Riley tried to encourage him to keep going. Janai was also thankful to have found him, but Niels seemed to accept his fate, which upset Riley. Later, while Riley slept, Janai sat by the fireplace and talked to Niels about their vacation and how much she missed home. Niels shared stories about his own family, whom he felt distant from because he had spent his life at sea. He mentioned a Welsh word, Herith, which means grief for a home one can never return to or never had. Janai thought God had abandoned them, while Niels felt everything was meaningless. The next morning, Riley woke Janai with bad news. Niels had died in his sleep. Janai went to check on Niels while Riley started digging a hole to bury him. When Janai came out, she questioned the point of burying Niels, which led to an argument about whether they should look for more people or focus on surviving. Riley said they had searched enough, but Janai felt they hadn't really tried. When they got back to the city, Janai took some duct tape and started marking abandoned houses. Riley followed her and pointed out that marking abandoned places wasn't helping them find a living. He begged her to come home. Janai said there was no home here. Another argument broke out. Riley saw Janai was looking for answers from above. He thought it was pointless because they couldn't change anything. He tried to convince her that they could still have a good life together, but Janai said she didn't know what that meant anymore. Later, Riley finished building a windmill and tried talking to Janai again. He took her to a river and reminded her about the glacier they had sat on, explaining that the water from the glacier created the river. He wanted to show Janai that life keeps going, which led to an emotional hug and kiss. At dinner, they shared their last bit of water. While Janai washed the dishes, her laptop got an email. She rushed to check it, hoping for good news, but it was just a photo from Riley. Janai cried, feeling disappointed and accepting that there was no one else out there. The next morning, Riley found a large white envelope with his name on it. After turning on the water pump he built, he looked inside the envelope and saw developed photos. Janai's expression in the photos worried him, though he drove around the city looking for her. He eventually found Janai's car by the geothermal pool and was heartbroken to see her body floating in the water. It seemed she had given up because she couldn't handle the situation. Riley pulled Janai out of the pool but couldn't save her. He thought about ending his life too, but couldn't bring himself to do it. He held Janai's body, crying deeply. Once he calmed down, he decided to leave her behind. Riley got back in his car and drove away, wondering what would happen to him now that he was truly alone.